skulls rolling out of walls, mummified bodies, walls packed with dozens of dolls stuffed with bones, entire skeletons, secret dungeons with chains, massive beehives. These are disturbing things found inside walls. Back in 1978, someone renovating a house in Batavia, Illinois, tore into a wall and a skull rolled out. A human one. Last kind you ever want to see, really. Police looked at it and quickly realized it was old, really old. They couldn't figure out who it belonged to though, so it ended up sitting in storage for decades. But then in 2021, the Kane County Coroner's Office took another look at it using modern DNA testing. The skull was identified as belonging to a 17-year-old girl named Esther Granger. She died in 1866 during childbirth and was buried in Merrillville, Indiana. So, mystery solved. Well, there's still a big glaring question. How does someone buried in Indiana in the 1800s end up inside the wall of a house in Illinois? Well, it's likely that her grave was disturbed sometime in the late 19th century. Grave robbing wasn't really rare back then. Medical schools paid for bodies and sometimes remains were taken and passed around to be studied. Somehow, at some point, that skull ended up inside a residential wall and stayed there for over a century. There's no clear record explaining exactly how it got there, but after more than 150 years, at least her name was finally put back to her remains. In Pontypool, Wales, contractors were doing renovation work on a house when they removed a false wall in a bedroom. Behind it, sitting upright in a chair, was a very pleasant sight. Only a mummified body. Turned out to be the homeowner, Elvira Stevens. She hadn't decomposed in a standard kind of fashion. Because the space behind the wall was sealed and dry, her body naturally mummified over time. Supposedly, a family member had concealed her body after she died. Investigators suspected it may have been done to avoid reporting her death to continue collecting pension payments. Instead of arranging a funeral, they just built a wall around her. Neighbors were led to believe she'd just moved away. No one realized she was still inside the house the entire time. In 2015, a homeowner in Topeka, Kansas started tearing down drywall during a renovation. Once the wall came apart, he noticed words carved directly into the wooden studs. And they were the kind of words that leave this nice, comforting, warm feeling in the pit of your gut. I see you. It seems like one of the Na'vi from Avatar was living in his wall. Is anyone gonna know about that joke? In like literally 2 weeks. All those Avatar movies come out, everyone forgets about them, and that it's I see you, if anyone remembers. Anyway, right under the message was a small drilled hole that went straight to the other side of the wall. The hole lined up with a private area of the house. The current homeowner had no idea it was there. The carving wasn't recent either. It had been clearly sitting there inside the wall for years, so someone had probably just been messing around, right? Well, it does get a little creepier. See, when reporters looked into the home's history, they found that a previous owner had been investigated in the past for voyeurism. Complaints had been made, but nothing led to any charges. A homeowner in Savannah, Georgia was doing attic renovations when they opened up a section of wall and found something packed inside the cavity, dozens of dolls. These weren't store-bought ones though, they were stitched by hand, and when they were examined more closely, some were stuffed with animal bones and hair. A few had glass eyes sewn into them. These were like, real witch-type dolls. And they'd clearly been placed there for a reason, positioned and sealed in the structure of the house. But why? Well, Savannah has a long history tied to different spiritual and folk traditions, and objects like these sometimes show up in buildings. Items were occasionally hidden in walls for protective or ritual reasons. That part apparently isn't unheard of, but anyone from Savannah, Georgia in the audience will have to confirm that for us in the comments. What made this extra creepy was the number of dolls though. It wasn't one, it was a collection. Homeowner contacted authorities because of, all the bones and hair in the dolls, but there was no evidence of a crime tied to them. Still creepy as hell. This isn't the only disturbing thing found inside a wall in Savannah though. The Foley House Inn is a historic bed and breakfast built in 1896 in the heart of the city. In 1987, workers were renovating when they busted open a wall and found human bones crammed inside. The Foley House was built by a widow named Honoria Foley. Back in the day, a man staying at the inn became obsessed with her. She didn't reciprocate his advances, but the man persisted. One night, he just forced his way into her bedroom. Honoria, in a state of panic, grabbed a heavy candlestick, clubbing him over the head with it. Now imagine the position she's in. Late 1800s, a woman running a business, a dead man in her bedroom. Terrified she was going to lose her business, or even worse, end up hanged in the town square, she called a carpenter friend and together they hid the body inside the wall of the house. People claim she admitted it on her deathbed in 1914. Well then, decades later, contractors tear into that same building and find the skeleton behind the wall. Since then, the inns had a reputation. Yes, talk about a pale man in a top hat showing up in hallways in the garden. In 2008, a woman said he shoved past her and disappeared. She followed the sound of footsteps that suddenly stopped near a wall. Staff later told her that was the same exact spot where the bones had been found years earlier. In one U.S. case that made national headlines, a family started hearing a faint buzzing coming from a bedroom wall. At first it was kind of subtle, but it got louder and it didn't really stop. Eventually they cut into the drywall to see what the hell was going on, and behind it was a massive beehive. Estimates put the colony at around 50,000 bees. The hive had grown so large that honey and wax was spreading through the wall cavity. The structure was starting to warp from the weight. Professionals had to be called in, of course, to safely remove the colony, because disturbing that many bees without protection would have been downright dangerous. Bees look for enclosed, protected spaces to build their hives. A hollow wall is basically perfect. Once they're inside, they can go unnoticed for a long time. In this case, the family had been sleeping just a few feet away from tens of thousands of insects living inside the wall. One of the most unsettling finds in recent years happened in a huge abandoned public building in Oakland, California. Construction crews were renovating the old Henry J. Kaiser Convention Center, a massive landmark, been closed for years. When workers were tearing down part of an interior wall, something really unexpected fell out of the gap. Although not unexpected by most Amazing Top 10 standards, it was human remains. And not just loose bones, this was a full body that had decomposed and essentially dried out right where it was found, caught in a narrow wall cavity. It was basically mummified. Over time, they were able to identify him, though, through forensic work as 44-year-old Joseph Edward Medjica, a man last seen alive in August of 2020. He'd been missing for more than a year. Sheriff's office later said there were no obvious signs of foul play or trauma, so they think he somehow ended up in that tiny space during the time the building was neglected and just died there. In Cleveland, Ohio, renovation crews working on a home discovered a concealed room behind a wall. It wasn't obvious from the outside. The entrance had been sealed over. Inside, investigators found chains attached to the walls and what appeared to be restraints. Police were called to inspect the scene. Given Cleveland's history, especially after the Ariel Castro kidnapping case was exposed in 2013, any discovery involving hidden rooms and restraints immediately raised alarm. If you've never heard of that case, by the way, a man named Ariel Castro kidnapped 3 women, Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina De Jesus, and held them captive in his home for about a decade. The victims were kept in locked rooms in his home, sometimes chained up. Castro was finally caught when Amanda Berry escaped and alerted neighbors. So in this case, a hidden room with chains in the wall was pretty alarming. But police investigated and didn't confirm the space was used for an act of kidnapping. The home had changed owners over the years too, and it wasn't really clear who built the room or when. When 28-year-old Emmy Brookman and her fiancé Norton Johnston bought their 400-year-old farmhouse in Lancashire, England, they expected a renovation. They didn't expect was to uncover bones hidden inside the walls. The couple bought the 3-bedroom property in February of 2023 and started renovations after discovering some issues. While chiseling away the old render near the front door, something popped out of the wall. Emmy said it was very obviously a bone. Over the course of the work, they found 6 bones in total, 4 in the exterior sections and 2 inside the wall cavities. One of the bones appeared to be the size and shape of a human finger, while the others seemed to come from animals. As they dug deeper into the house's history, they learned that hiding bones and odd objects in walls wasn't uncommon back in the day. It had to do with old beliefs about protection and warding off evil. Alongside the bones, they also found a small green bottle filled with ashes and herbs. Speaking of bottles found in walls, this next one is not a single case. It's well documented across multiple historic homes. In England and later in parts of the United States, people in the 16th and 17th centuries would hide what were called witch bottles under hearths, near doorways, and inside walls. Archaeologists have found them during renovations of old properties. These bottles were usually sealed containers filled with stuff like human hair, nail clippings, pins, bent nails, and sometimes urine. People believed these objects would trap or repel harmful spiritual forces. Really? Urine in a bottle? That's gonna keep me away from your home? Yes, probably will. All that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in